So they say that the intro is the most important part of a video. I should have written a better one. Hey, and welcome to this month's Lightning Round video. If you guys are new here, Lightning Round videos where I take questions from Patreon supporters who support at the solar system level, and I give them the Joe Pass. I give them my take. That's what these are. As always, if you think any of these topics deserve a video all to themselves, just let me know down in the comments. And if you want to send a question yourself, just go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe, find the right tier, and I'll answer your burning question. All right, first question goes to Robin Colburn, who asked, did the Beatles have a great influence on the up-and-coming generation of their day, or did they merely hold a mirror to it? Do you see anything near that momentum today, and if so, is it for the better or worse, or neutral, and could it matter? I get a lot of music questions in these Lightning Round videos for a very non-music channel. I think people just like music. I don't know what to say. So, I was actually... confession here, I was never really a big Beatles fan. My parents didn't really listen to the Beatles when I was growing up. We were a country music family. I grew up in a small Texas town. There was going to be Alabama. There was going to be the Oak Ridge Boys, the Statler Brothers, Marty Robbins. So much Marty Robbins. Big iron on his hip. Now, when I got older and started listening to the Beatles a little bit, I became very blown away by the fact that their entire career lasted literally like 7 years. I was doing a thing for a while where I was listening to the entire discographies of certain artists. I did it for Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, the Beatles, some others. And yeah, the way their music changed and their style changed over just such a short period of time is mind-blowing to me. And as somebody now who like kind of, has an audience doing what I do here, the fact that they did something brand new on every single album, they like were constantly doing something that people weren't expecting, that takes some guts, man. It takes some guts to like do something when your audience is expecting you to do something else, So whether or not they were an inspiration for or a mirror for their generation, I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that. What I do find interesting is a lot of people say that, you'll never see a superstar like that again. You'll never get the Beatles or Elvis or even a Michael Jackson ever again because our media and our music landscape is so fractured now. I think maybe, though, Taylor Swift may have disproven that in the last few years, just her scale. Like, nobody thought that somebody could be that big again, and she was, so... And I'd say if there's anything that has that much sway over the music industry right now, it wouldn't be any specific artists. It would kind of be the platforms themselves. I ran across an article in the New York Times that was talking about like advice on how to find new music in the age of streaming that we're in right now. And I resonate with that quite a bit. Because like I'll go on Spotify and it has these like daily mixes or whatever. It has all these different little mixes that it made for you. I remember once upon a time you would just hit shuffle and it would just shuffle through all the stuff that was on your iPod and various configurations and stuff. But that's the thing is you fall into this trap in Spotify because you play those mixes and it's just kind of the same songs over and over again, Which ironically I don't think is that much different than radio. I haven't really listened to radio in a really long time. But the last time that my wife and I were on vacation, we're in a different car and I couldn't get the Apple CarPlay to get set up or whatever, so we're listening to radio. And I noticed that like we kept hearing the same songs every time we were driving. And it occurred to me that like we were only in the car for like 1 or 2 hours out of the entire day. And we still were hearing like multiple songs replayed over and over again. And I'm like, are they just playing the same 10 songs over and over again? So I find myself in this position where, again, I resonate with that article. Like, I really feel like I'm having a harder time finding new music now than I used to. And what's mind-blowing about that is that for the first time in human history, we've got this rectangle in our pockets giving us access to all the music that has ever been recorded, basically. And for some reason, now we're having a harder time finding music than back when you had to actually get up off the couch, get in your car, go to the record store, and spend money for a specific record that you spent all afternoon looking for. It is quite the paradox. So no, I kind of hate to say it, but if anything has like momentum behind it in the music world right now, it's probably AI. AI algorithms decide what you get to listen to. AI artists are flooding Spotify and other places. In fact, it made news last week that an AI song became #1 on the country charts, which feels like a bit of a tipping point. Although country music has been becoming more artificial for decades now, so it might as well be done by AI at this point, I guess. Jeff Mlinarchik asked, Joe, if there was one subject topic that you could magically know or understand fully, what would it be and why? My immediate thought when I read that question was gravity. It's still this fundamental force that we don't understand. We still haven't found a graviton. Like, we kind of know we understand its effects really well, but we still don't fully understand like how it works. And it's crazy. It's just such a fundamental part of the universe. And the fact that we still don't quite fully understand how it works is just mind-blowing to me. Because like if we could manipulate gravity, I mean, we'd have our flying cars, we would have warp speed travel, we would be able to, do all kinds of things that the sci-fi world has been imagining for decades, but we're nowhere near close to right now. I don't know if that's the kind of answer that you wanted for that question. That's more of a society thing. That's more of a science thing that I wish we understood. For me personally, it's funny, I just talked about music. I wish I knew music theory as well as I would like to. I'm always fascinated by like why certain combinations of sounds make us feel certain ways. That's just an interesting phenomenon to me. But that's something that I could study. I'm just too lazy to. Maybe electricity. That's a frustrating one for me. It's been explained to me a million times, but I still get, twisted up on the difference between amps and volts and watts and all that. I don't know why. I've always struggled to keep that straight in my head. And again, it's been explained to me. Somebody's going to do it in the comments right now. They're already typing. I can see it. But it just always escapes me, and that's really annoying. I wish I could just magically understand it. Jackery asked, Howdy, Joe. How exactly does someone, such as yourself, end up getting into science education? And what would you recommend to somebody who is interested in doing the same thing? I mean, I always say that I kind of fell bass-ackwards into it, I started off trying to be a comedy channel, just kind of giving funny answers to questions that like my friends were giving me. It was mostly just my friends at first. And then somebody asked a question that was sort of related to the Fermi paradox, so I did a video that actually gave a real answer. It wasn't just making jokes, and I made it about the Fermi paradox. Who would have thought it actually started doing really well? I started getting more subscribers that were asking more questions in that nerdy vein, and, here we are. But if I'm being honest with myself, I was always a bit of a nerd growing up. I had a poster of the space shuttle on my wall. I had a poster of Einstein on my wall. I didn't really excel in science classes that much, really, but I was always very interested in it. Like the first thing I ever remember really wanting to be when I grew up was an astronaut. I was hardcore about wanting to be an astronaut when I was a kid. So I guess the nerddom was in me the whole time. But, as I got older, I went into filmmaking and advertising writing and storytelling and stuff like that. And if I'm being honest with you, I think that probably helped me out far more than the science stuff. Like the science stuff I just kind of would figure out along the way. But being able to tell a coherent story and communicate well, I think that has a lot more to do with, what I've been able to do here on YouTube. Because I am not a scientist by any stretch. I mean, like I just said, I barely understand how electricity works. But I have met with many scientists at this point, and a recurring theme, something that they keep, telling me and reinforcing with me, because, I meet these actual scientists and I'm always so like humbled and like, oh, I don't understand this stuff. But like, they will always tell me that like, it's so important to have somebody to be able to communicate this stuff at the general public level, because they are so in on these things that they themselves can't really explain it very well at a level that the average person could understand. So when I'm meeting with scientists and they tell me that what I do is important, that feels good. So to answer your question about how to get into it, I would say focus on that, really. Focus on storytelling techniques, on creating hooks that bring people in and drive their imaginations and get them engaged in what you're doing. The science stuff, the nitpicky details, you'll figure that out as you go along. And you're not going to get everything right. You're going to make mistakes. God knows I have. But I think as long as you come at it with a healthy respect for the science and a respect for the responsibility that you have as a science communicator to get the facts as accurate as you possibly can. Don't come at it with ego. Come at it with, humility, and be willing to correct yourself if you get something wrong. I think as long as you have that kind of spirit in you as you go about it, I think that's the most important thing. And my overall advice as a YouTuber is to just get started. People always ask what's the best camera to use and whatnot, and it's like the best camera to use is the one you got. Just get started. You'll make a lot of mistakes. It'll be really difficult, but You'll learn, you'll get better, and yeah. I also get asked a lot if it's like too oversaturated right now on YouTube, and the only response I can give to that is that people were saying it was oversaturated when I got in there, and that was 11 years ago. So I don't think so. So yeah, just get started, give it a try, and good luck. All right, Brian Beswick asked, with so many advances in DNA manipulation, what would you like to see science do to make Thanksgiving dinner even better? I want cranberry sauce made from real cranberries, but it's got to be in the shape of a can. Maybe science can engineer a giant cranberry in the shape of a can. That would be good. I don't know. Honestly, Thanksgiving dinner is kind of perfect as it is. I don't know like what science could do to improve on that other than like give you a second stomach so you can eat more. Maybe alter our DNA so we don't gain weight from it. I just want to eat Thanksgiving all year long. You know? Turkey and stuffing sandwiches all year long. Why not? Why don't we do that? Nobody's saying you can't do that. What if you change everyone's DNA so that everything tastes like turkey and dressing? Smart. All right, next question goes to BeachNut K, who asked, we put a man on the moon. We put several men on the moon, actually. Why can't we make a microwave that makes a bowl of soup all the same temperature instead of one side boiling hot and the other still fresh from the fridge? Okay, I feel ya. I do think, though, soup might not be the best example of that, because you can always just stir up the soup, you know? You can't stir up a frozen burrito.
These are my favorite. It's hot on the outside, icicle in the middle.
So I looked this up, and the reason for the unevenness is, well, let me explain the reason for the unevenness so that you can understand why it's difficult to fix the problem. So the inside of a microwave is basically blasted with microwave radiation. Duh. And it's produced by this device called the magnetron, which is surprisingly not a Transformers character. So what it does is it creates basically a standing wave, an oscillating wave inside of the microwave, and that oscillating wave interacts with the water and the food. The water molecules are charged, so as that wave oscillates, it causes the water molecules to vibrate up and down. That vibration creates friction, energy, heat. So what's actually being warmed up is the water inside of the food that you're cooking. And by the way, in order to target those water molecules, most microwaves operate at 2.45 gigahertz, and it produces wavelengths that are about 12.2 centimeters across. Which means that there are certain places in the food in those waves, those 12 centimeter waves, that will be warming the food and other areas where it's not going to be warming the food. So it's inherently uneven. And this is usually solved for by putting a rotating, plate at the bottom. So the rotating plate spreads the, heat around, but it's still not perfect. And interestingly, the colder the food is, the less effective the microwave cooking is. Like ice actually doesn't melt in a microwave because those water molecules that need to vibrate are locked in place, right? So it does. I mean, the ice does melt because maybe the bowl that it's in warms up, and that is what the warmth of the bowl will melt the ice. But the microwaves themselves do not directly melt the ice, according to what I read anyway. So, say if you have the frozen burrito example, certain parts of the burrito will heat up. And it's the outside that gets warmed up, the covering of it that warms up, and then that seeps in to the center, which is why you'll have this center part that never quite gets fully warm and it's super ice cold, whereas the outside is baking. Now there are some ways around this. Some people suggest lowering the power level down to 50% and then cooking it for longer. That kind of more evenly distributes the heat. Obviously, that kind of undoes the purpose of a microwave, which is that it cooks really fast. There are some newer microwaves that combine the microwave with convection heating, so it moves hot air around inside of it as well, so you're kind of getting a hybrid microwave air fryer effect going on. There is a very new technology, though, that was just presented in the September 2021 issue of Microwave and Optical Technology Letters, that journal, and it proposed what they call reconfigurable diffractive beamforming surfaces. And this is supposed to reflect and absorb the heat in various configurations that make it heat up more evenly, the plate at the bottom heats perfectly even all the way across. It's way over my head, but I'll put a link down in the description for you. Now, it's just a proposed technology right now. I don't know that there's even a working model that's been created yet, so it's definitely not on the market or anything like that. Could be a really long time if we ever see it. But in the meantime, you can always arrange your food in the shape of a donut. Apparently, they say that will cause it to to heat evenly, because as it spins, it'll heat and same. So that's all you got to do. Just make everything a donut. All right, we got one more question to get to, but first let's bless all the new Patreon and channel members with the power of Zoe. Here we go. We got on Patreon Rick Daniels, Kim, Marvin Price. Haha, you have to read this Dance Monkey Dance. Seriously, is there not a character limit? There is a character limit. Justin Giordi, Daniel Webb, Tom Annable, Brooke Kissinger, Charlie L., Manchuck, and Robin Blood. And for new members, we have Alan Brody, Joni the Jogger, Scott Stoner, Matt R., Laura Olmstead, Muesli Juice, Sharon Sauer, Daniel McCrae, L., Joel Shamp, Roanoke the Wiccan Wizard, Michael McCrae, Darth Vader, Sean Seguin, Michael Zezzen, and Messy Jesse. Thank you guys so much for signing up. If you'd like to join them, again, you can go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe, link down in the description, or just hit the little join button down below to become a member. All right, last question goes to Donna Sawyer, who asked, where do the sites that verify internet stories like Snopes get their information? How do they know that their source info is valid? Who fact checks the fact checkers is the question, I guess. Well, I looked into it, and on Snopes, actually, they spell this out pretty well in their About Us page. So they've got a pretty extensive FAQ section here, and the very first question at the very top is about their fact-checking process. And it says right here, so our research generally begins with, whenever possible, attempting to contact the source of the claim for elaboration and supporting information. We also attempt to contact individuals and organizations who would be knowledgeable about or have relevant expertise in the subject at hand, as well as searching out printed information, news articles, scientific and medical journal articles, books, interview transcripts, statistical sources with bearing on the topic. They say, we attempt to use nonpartisan information and data sources, e.g. peer-reviewed journals, government agency statistics, as much as possible, and to alert readers that information and data from sources such as political advocacy organizations and partisan think tanks should be regarded with skepticism. So it's basically about being really transparent with your sources, so that people, when they read it, can go and verify the information themselves. Also, just, old school journalism, actually calling people and reaching out to experts and finding first-hand accounts and interview transcripts and stuff like that. Also notice at the beginning of their About Us page where they list all their team members, it says, members of our editorial staff are precluded from donating to or participating in political campaigns, political party activities, or political advocacy organizations. Sounds pretty important. I also noticed that right here on their About Us page it says Snopes is a member of the IFCN and in compliance with the International Fact-Checking Network's highest standards of combating misinformation online. So the IFCN was created by the Poynter Institute, and they're like a sort of a school of journalism and basically a monitoring watchdog organization that keeps track of like the biases and media and whatnot. And if you're wondering what it means to be a signatory of the IFCN, they list it right here, the commitments of the Code of Principles. Principle number 1, a commitment to nonpartisanship and fairness. And they actually list very specific criteria that each signatory has to achieve to be, kind of qualified by their terms. Principle number 2, a commitment to standards and transparency of sources. Principle number 3, a commitment to transparency of funding and organization. And principle number 4, a commitment to standards of transparency and methodology. So in other words, signatories explain the methodology they use to select and research and publish and all that stuff. Principle number 5, a commitment to an open and honest corrections policy. In other words, basic journalism ethics, which I'm sad to say many major news publications would probably fail these standards. And that's what's upsetting to me. Like, this all sounds revolutionary, right? But this is basic journalism. That's how it should all work. There's this whole argument that's come out since the age of the internet and everything that, should there be gatekeepers or shouldn't there be gatekeepers when it comes to information? And I think in the early days of the internet, we were all very solidly about break down the gatekeepers. Nobody should gatekeep information. But I think the proof is that we were maybe not correct about that. Like, journalistic standards are a real thing. They are very carved in stone, and they're very similar to the scientific process, the peer-reviewed scientific process. It's not perfect, but it's the best system that we have. And we've gotten so used to our news being mostly opinions and personality driven content now that the idea of getting back to basic journalistic ethics sounds like some new idea, but it's not. This is how it should have been this whole time. We forget that journalism students learn this stuff at school, the basic journalistic ethics. Just like any science student learns the scientific process and the peer review process. Like these are the first things you learn if you're going to become a journalist. And this is where I get a bit ranty, because there are third-party organizations like the Poynter Institute, like the IFCN, that monitor this stuff and they watchdog this stuff. And there is no reason why all of our social media platforms couldn't have that sort of a badge. That's for any source that gets shared on social media. Everyone should have a badge like that that tells you whether or not they follow the basic journalistic ethics that we should come to assume every news organization does. I mean, yes, it would be expensive to implement that, but these are some of the most valuable companies in the history of the world. They can afford it. They just choose not to. So it falls to sites like Snopes to pick up the slack. And I think it's a very valid and very important question that you ask. That who fact checks the fact checkers, right? How do we know that what they're saying is accurate and that we can trust it? And I'm sure that Snopes gets some things wrong, but they have a corrections policy to correct the record as best they can. That's all we can ask of anybody, right? I really feel like of all the things that have changed with the internet and social media, that's the thing that probably bothers me the most. You know, we've kind of lost that separation between opinion and news reporting. And news outlets have always needed to make money, you know, just like anything else. But with the internet and now social media, that incentive is really accelerated. The news doesn't arrive at your doorstep anymore. It arrives in the form of sound bites and headlines that have to compete against thousands of other sound bites and headlines. And it's turned into this like competition of who can get the most clicks as quickly as possible. It's just all kind of melded into this misinformation monstrosity, and we act like there's no solution to it. You know, people gonna people. But there are actual organizations out there that maintain journalistic standards. And if that's something you care about, and you should seriously consider today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News does exactly what I'm talking about here, and I've been using it for a couple of years now. I've been enjoying it. It's a website and an app that's designed to help you understand the news that you see every day. Here's how it works. They pull in articles from all over the world, right? And they organize them by story. So for each story, they provide helpful breakdowns and visualizations to help you understand potential biases, framing, reliability, even parts of the story that might have been left out. So they don't report the news, they report on the reporting of the news. And all their insights are backed by ratings from 3 independent media watchdog organizations. Let's look at this story about Chinese state-backed hackers who used AI for a cyber attack. So there's over 170 sources reported on it, and if I scroll down, I can filter and sort by ownership, factuality, and even location. I wanted to filter out the sources that are owned by media conglomerates and focus instead on independent-owned media. And then from there, I can compare to see how these sources are framing the narrative. Left-leaning outlets tend to mention Anthropic AI's role in the attack, while right-leaning outlets tend to focus more on the geopolitical threat. Which makes sense, you know, people who are politically left are going to be more suspicious of corporations, while people on the right are going to be more worried about China. But neither one of those directions gives you the whole story. As I've been saying for years, Ground News gives you more information about your information. So you can be sure that the info that you're basing your opinions and your ideas around, you can be sure that those opinions are accurate. Honestly, if I was the king, I would make it a rule that all social media posts need to have this feature, but I'm not, and I can't. But what I can do is offer you a nice discount on Ground News. So if you go to the link down in the description or scan Mr. QR code here, you can get 40% off their Vantage plan, which is what I use and what I just showed you. So that's ground.news/Joe Scott. The link's down below. I encourage you to check it out. Alright, so that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time here, lightning rounds, I do these once a month. I do other videos too, despite what some people in the comments might be saying. But if you like this and you want to see more, we'll put another video up here that you can go check out, maybe a non-lightning round video. And yeah, just get on YouTube and any of the thumbnails that, you know, have my little face icon on there. Take a look. If you enjoy them, I invite you to subscribe because I come back with videos pretty much weekly again. We're getting back to that. But that's it for today. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week. Have a great Thanksgiving for those who celebrate, and I'll catch you guys next week. Love you guys. Take care.